think we're live. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So today, I guess first of all, last week was our first live stream, and I don't think we did a very good job, or we didn't do it at all, of telling anybody about it. But considering that, I think it did pretty well. I can't tell if this is like there it is. We are live streaming. Okay. I got a lot of people excited to watch it. And did you get any positive feedback from people?
Oh yeah, I had a few people message me right after. It was excited that we are covering aquascaping. There's not many doing it live streaming, and so people are excited.
Good. Yeah. I figured after this one we hopefully will have everything figured out so we can do a schedule and people will be aware that it's coming, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm actually a little anxious and nervous, so the idea of telling everybody about it still makes me a little flustered.
Yeah.
Oh
Once we
my.
get used to it a little bit more, we'll get a routine here. It's just the holidays and a lot of work going on.
Yes. So it says hopefully we can hear. I'm going to unmute this just for a second so I can see if it. Can you talk,
Or
Shelby?
we'll get yeah.
Yes, perfect. I can hear it. Sorry. All right. So today we are going to talk about aquascaping rules in the competitive world of aquascaping. So that's something that Shelby, you're really a part of, pretty in depth. I didn't even know it existed until a couple of months ago. So, how would you describe that world?
It's interesting. It's different in every capacity on from online to in person. I would say it's it's probably just like about any hobby and how you can get competitive, but you make a lot of friends in the competitive world of aquascaping, and then sometimes you don't make friends when you're competing in sports. So and it's kind of like a sport when you're in person competing, and online's a whole different story. You really don't see anyone, you don't really talk to anyone. It's all about you and what you do, and then you get the results at the end of the year. So that's definitely a whole different aspect that I haven't even dipped my toes into. It's a lot to think about.
I know it's one thing that I'm definitely, as of like 2 weeks ago, I started referring to it as a sport, mainly because I thought it was funny to refer to it as a sport. And then
Yeah.
also, it is, it does very much remind me of a sport. Like it's so competitive, but I've done sports most of my life, and like cross country, a lot of them were independent sports, but soccer and track and swimming. And it's funny how when everybody's goal is to improve, how it really builds this community.
Yeah.
I feel like it's cliche calling it a community, but it's I feel like the same type of excitement that builds around like football teams and stuff. I see that a lot of times in the aquascaping community. And then when there's a famous aquascaper, I say it in air quotes because it seems silly from the outside, thinking about someone being famous for aquascaping.
Yeah.
But people freak out. Like,
Oh yeah.
they're like, oh my
So a
God, I've
lot
been
of people
watching
do
this
that at the
person's,
show.
yeah. They're like, I've been watching this person's work for my whole life. Like, this has really impacted my, the way I do things and the way they look at the world. And, like the last Aquashella, I think someone was coming named Steve, who I had never met before, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's the best! Like you're just gonna be blown away." And it's like I was blown away, but it's just like from the outside looking in, it's really funny watching how excited people get to meet these people.
Yeah. When you break it down and understand how many thousands of people compete in the aquascaping contest online, and how difficult it is to get the right picture, the right depth, the right size tank, everything, that the little intricate details that go into aquascaping. And then to take someone from the US, where we're kind of behind on aquascaping compared to other
You don't say.
countries, they it even adds a bigger challenge. So when you place in the top like 100, it's something to brag about, that's for sure. And we've had a couple people at Aquashella that are in that category, so it does get some people excited, because how big of a challenge that was for them. So it's really exciting to see and then get their perspective on things.
Well, I think by the time we get through with this today, if you watch this, you should have a pretty good idea of how to design like a pro. I think that's the title of the episode. And even maybe you might consider entering into some of these competitions.
Yes.
So the first thing I have is aquascaping fundamentals. So knowing what aquascaping is, how it's a blend of art and science, the importance of aesthetics and natural inspiration and design, and common aquascaping styles, I think are important to talk about. Which one would you like to dive into first, Shelby?
So defining aquascaping in itself. So it's different for everybody involved. That's the great thing. From whatever age you are, I've seen young kids get into aquascaping and all the way up. And it's really interesting to take your own, time to do what you enjoy, because what you're really doing is creating nature in your house. That's what captures your attention usually. It's like, wow. Just like when I was doing a tank for Aquashella, I did a diorama, which is not very common to do. And that's where you try to recreate like mountain cliffs and things like that. It's very difficult. But the amount of people that were walking by and say, wow, that looks like somewhere I have been. I have hiked those mountains before. It takes me back. And then like to the naturescapes the same way. It's just like, man, that reminds me of my childhood. It's something like that you want to recreate in a tank. And it's not difficult. It just takes some practice. And it's just so cool the way you can make something in a tank look like it's something bigger out in nature that you enjoy and you want to bring home every day. Like you just got to bottle up that mountain in Arizona and bring it back home after having a wonderful vacation there. So it's really cool. And it's not only cool, but good for your inhabitants and fish, shrimp, things like that.
So that's something I've never experienced before. That must have been super cool. Like someone walking by and being like, this reminds me of a place I've been.
It made my heart just full of love, honestly. Like, you don't really get compliments when you're at home. So when you're aquascaping in person, it's really cool, like, to hear people say things like that. People just walk by and, like, they don't really even talk to you sometimes. That's the funny thing, because they don't want to disturb you, but you'll hear their comments. And a lot of people will say things like that, like, oh, that looks familiar. Like, most of mine are usually inspired. People think that I've been to Arizona like 100 times, which I've never.
You've never
like,
been?
No, not to Arizona.
Oh, we'll have to fix that then.
Yeah. But yeah, people think that that's where I get my inspiration from.
So like this leads me to like the first component of, I think, aquascaping competitions. You're talking about being at like a physical one. So I think there's, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's two typical types of aquascapes: in person, or aquascape competitions, in person or on the internet, right?
Yep.
So the in-person one is what it sounds like. Like you show up, there's a tank, It's an empty tank. Do you know the size of the tank beforehand normally?
Yes, usually when you're entering into the contest, you know which ones you're doing.
And then there's a bunch of materials there. And everybody has to use those same materials, right?
Yep, there is different contests. There've been we've been competing for since like 2018 or 2019 around there, and it's been different. It really depends on who's running it and what you do, because there are some competitions where you're able to bring your stuff from home, like your own grown plants, different like aesthetics. Like some people use different crushed rock that they could bring, and it makes it easier not to do it there. But most of them now have been like, what is available there is what you use, besides your like tools you bring from home.
So what kind of tools would you bring from home?
You could do like a sawzall. We use that to cut some of the pieces of wood, because not every piece of wood is
So some power
good.
tools, huh?
Yeah, hammers are like our number one. We smash the rocks for details. There's a lot of tools. It's just little things, tweezers. Some of it is provided at the contests for you, but like bigger things like super glue and what you use to glue. There's a lot of different little tricks on how to keep wood and rock together. Anywhere from, we've used thermoplastics, which people are blown away when we do those.
I don't even know what that is.
They're it's like a putty when you heat it up, and then it hardens because it's used for cast. Yeah, we learned that from Brooklyn Hardscape a long time ago. He did a talk for our club and taught us that, and we used it for a long time. People thought we were crazy because we brought this little stovetop and cooked it up, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And the most used thing is super glue and cigarette filters. When they're combined, they harden real quick, and then you use activator to spray onto it, and it cements it together pretty much. And I've used other things like little filter media that goes into a canister filter. I've actually
Were you looking at a canister filter while you were saying that?
Yeah.
You're like, I can tell that you were focused
like,
on something.
There's too many names for filters around now.
So is there any limit to what you can bring, or is it just kind of up to you?
No, there's not. As long as you can carry it, it would get a little, I've seen people with their like tool bags and stuff. Someone has like a rolling cart they bring because they're used to this. They do it like professionally. And we don't bring some of the stuff because we don't have room, but there's no limit. It's just, you need to be safe, and it can't be anything that goes in the tank that you use as a tool.
Could you bring your own wood if you wanted to, or is that not? So
No,
you have to use whatever's there?
Yeah, so you have to use the rock, wood, and plants provided at that contest. We have had other contests that were, you could bring your own stuff, where I had some people that did bring like their own branches and stuff, trees and logs, but those competitions aren't around anymore. So it's really based on which one. You just have to read the rules on that and whether it's okay or not.
So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit in our outline that we have and go ahead and talk about the aquascaping competitions. I think we kind of covered in our last episode about why these are important to the aquascaping community, but is there anything you want to add on that?
It's just really good to get that out there, to get people interested in it. And they really bring excitement to the community and get people to collectively think of different ideas. And each aquascaping contest has come up with new rules, new ways to transform the contest. It's really cool to learn how to compete different. So sometimes we have different judges who like different styles. So it comes in handy getting to know your judges and the styles that they like to aquascape and see. It tends to lean towards your benefit for that. If you understand, if they like dioramas, they enjoy the different, because like me and Grant kind of throw it out there. We go complete opposite way of most people, which is naturescapes, because that is more aesthetically pleasing to most people, is naturescapes, where we like dioramas, we like pushing the envelope, we like doing some crazy stuff that it might not be natural, but it looks like it could be, and it's different. And so learning all of that, with competitions, you could have like a step up knowing that this person really likes naturescapes, so let's tend to lean towards that and really focus on it, and they'll enjoy it.
So I know Aquashella is the main aquascaping competitions that I've been to before, and the Aquatic Expo, obviously. But I'm normally running around with a chicken with my head cut off for those. But I actually have the scorecard from Aquashella, and one of the things that I found really interesting is it seems like everybody really has a desire to develop each other's skills, and I think one of the ones was it Chicago, where there wasn't enough people in the competition?
Yeah.
So they had found some more novice aquascapers to join in, and I was just walking around watching, and people were pointing out to each other like things that would make each other's aquascapes better, and it's like if I was doing this, I'd be sabotaging people. Like, oh, that looks terrible. You need to move that. But it's really like heartwarming, like you said earlier, seeing how people want to see each other improve. So I think that that's like a big component of aquascaping competitions that's good. There's the recognition, and actually Ashley, Blue Mind Ecosystem, said earlier, when I first met Shelby, I had never heard of the Garden of Eden or seen her work. After that show, I was definitely starstruck and was so excited I competed against her and met her. So like, I think it just really speaks to the idea of recognition, right? It's you're famous in a small group of people, but you're considered very famous. Like, people will get really emotional about meeting some of their aquascaping celebs.
Yeah, I can't believe it when they were excited to scape against me. I was like, how do you even know me? I didn't realize that you could feel that way, you know, like I'm still sitting here and I'm learning to me, and I'm nowhere near some of these people in the aquascaping community.
Oh, you're impressive.
Thank you. And I just enjoy every aspect of it. And it has been really wonderful, the compliments you get from other people competing against you. And they always help out. I try to help out. It's just one of those things. It does no one any good for you to be against someone in the competitive.
You're not as competitive as me.
Yeah. Well, I've always been super competitive. Like in sports, it's a whole different aspect. Like you want first and you want to win because it's your personal best.
Yeah. The smack talk is different, right?
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Like if I lost in sports, because I was big in sports, I would definitely be down on myself. Where the aquascaping, I'm still proud of myself. I'm still proud that I created something beautiful. I'm still proud that it's, you know, it didn't win first place, but I had 100 people come up to me and tell me that theirs was my favorite, you know, and you still get that feeling of, I did this, I created something out of nothing, just like artwork. When you think about it, it's competitive world in art. There's always people that make millions off their one little piece of art. There's people that only make $30, but you still get the satisfaction that someone came and bought your art or looked at it and gave you a compliment, and you knew that you did it and it was your creativity, and no one can take that away from you. So it doesn't matter in competitions whether you get, first or last, you still made something that other people enjoy. It might just not have been the judge's choice this time.
Yes, still a sense of accomplishment, right? And I feel
Yes.
like a lot of times the judges, like, it's by like decimal points difference
Yeah.
in the who won or lost, because it's not really like every one of them is so absolutely incredible and stunning that it's just barely one person gets ahead of the other. And it's like technicality stuff that tends to happen, right?
Yeah, that's where it really comes down to. A lot of it, they get to tell you everything. Mine happened to come down to like shadowing, where like you could stand back and look at my tank, and they all really enjoyed it. They loved it. But mine didn't place high because there was flaws in it, where someone walking around the show wouldn't see any of those flaws. They would just say, "This is great. I don't understand how you didn't win." But you go back and
that's the way I always feel when you don't win.
But there's so many flaws. Like it could have been 1,000 times better on just like a few rocks. And like I even understand. And some of the other ones, like people are like, "Well, why did that win?" And you're like, "Well, I mean, it takes you in that tank. There's so much more than just looking at it, and oh well, there's just a tree stump in there." And some people feel that way, but there's other.
We don't care about those people. Those
get.
people, this YouTube channel is not for those people.
Right. Yeah. You gotta see the inspiration and the what work goes into some of these tanks and everything else to really appreciate every single one of them. And yeah, there's a lot to do with it, and they explain it. And yeah, a lot of time mine is technical little things here and there that kind of get your points off.
Having a smooth gravel front, I learned that recently, that's a technical thing that can make you lose points or not.
Yeah, actually one of our first competitions, and it hurts, don't get me wrong, it stings when you don't win, but one of our first big tank competitions, there was we did a diorama, which we did not know at the time wasn't really a big thing. This is back in like 2018. It's just harder to accomplish those, and especially in a live contest that's timed. And we had probably 3 inches of soil in the front of the tank, and it's really cool tank. It looks cool, and we actually got people's favorite. So everyone at the show voted for our tank, which is cool. We did not place it all, but we did get people's choice, and it was still really rewarding. We were like, yeah, how did we not win? And it was like, even a little while it took us to understand what we did wrong. And like, sometimes we wish we could go back and recreate it, to fix all the mistakes that we've made. But one of them was big amount of
it was at least 4 inches of sand.
It was crazy. It was
a face full
great.
So I think, just to talk about some of those competitions specifically, the one I'm most familiar with, and I actually heard about at AGA, which is our second one we're going to talk about, but the first one is International Aquatic Plants Layout Contest, IAPLC. Is that probably the most prestigious one?
I would say it's up there. Yes.
So it's thousands of people enter that one, right?
Yes, that's the one. If you do place in the top 100, that's the people that are the famous aquascapers, and people really want to get to know them because they have, they've done it. They have insight on how to compete. They get feedback from those, so they can, tell you what they did wrong to what they can improve on for next time. So it's really good to get all that information so you don't make those same mistakes.
Do you know any of those rules off the top of your head?
So a lot of them are just the specific same rules as aquascaping in general, like the rule of thirds, the focal points, depth and perception, things like that.
And we'll talk about those in detail after we talk about the contests, but
Yeah. And then the photos specifically have to be, I mean, those have to be pristine, very high quality. Those are where you could really lose the contest. You could have the most beautiful
So just to
tank
step
in the
back just a
contest.
little bit, because just in case someone's watching this who doesn't know anything about this competition, this one is an international competition that you submit a photo of your aquarium to, right?
Yep.
And people spend like months growing the plants in the aquarium and making sure everything's just right. And the way I understand it is people take bunches of pictures until they get just the perfect picture where the fish are in the right spot and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
All
And
right.
it's from all over the world they're competing.
All right, now keep going. I may have thrown you
So,
off by
yeah.
interrupting.
I mean, people will spend, and usually you have to do it at night. You should see some of these people. There is like pictures of people taking pictures of their tank, with like putting things over their tank to block the glare, because glare is a big thing with tanks. I don't know if you've ever tried to take a picture of your fish or something. Usually it doesn't turn out very great because you
Never.
got a lot of glare from
Even
the
in this
tank.
picture that's our background, this is one of
Yeah.
your fish tanks at one of the shows that I took, and you can see my fingers still in the and like other
Oh
people
yeah,
taking
your arm.
pictures, and like you
Yeah.
can see other people trying to like cover the lens to try and reduce the glare, and I'm just like boop.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the hardest things, and I actually only know how to do this really well from learning over experience of me and Grant taking photos of our shrimp. We have hundreds of tanks, and those are really small, tiny things, and there's so much glare. So like nighttime is like the only time you can do it. Usually have to be dressed in black because even your skin, the smallest light reflecting on it will show up in the camera. So it's a lot to think about. And it's just crazy to see some of these people and how they have to take photos. I learned a lot from Mo Devlin, who takes a lot of photos for Seagrass. So I got a little one up on the photos, but they have to like be perfect. And a lot of times people will sit there, you know how hard it is to get a school of fish to school in the middle of your aspect and your focal point. That's where a lot of people like to get their fish schooling. It is a lot to do. And then I mean that's just the photo part. That's not talking about building this tank. A lot of people have to build it, tear it down, put it back up. The plants have to be healthy. You know how easy it is to leave your lights on a little too long and that algae starts to come, and having to take care of that. The CO2 to get some of those beautiful red plants, because red really stands out in an aquascape. So there's a lot to think about when doing that. And it's called the plant layout contest because where you specifically put plants is a big deal. Like you don't want to be putting a huge plant in front of your tank because it'll take your eye away from your focal point. And there's so many little things to think about in an aquascape like that. The way the plant is growing, you even think about that in a live contest, because you're not growing those plants. Those plants are provided for you, but they might be growing this way when your light is this way. So it's small things to think about, and making sure they're not overgrown and don't look the best. You have to trim it. I'm pretty sure almost everyone who competes in this contest trims their plants every day. And
It
I've
seems
seen
like
people
just
say-
talking about the plants and the photography by itself could be two completely separate episodes.
Yeah, yes, it really could. It's something you could dive really deep into aquascaping and just talk about plant health, to the rocks and to the substrate, to how to build it, how to create the structures.
It sounds
Structures are
like
one
we've
of the
already
things.
got like a setup for our next couple of
Yeah.
episodes.
Yep. It can happen. It's a lot. It's not something you could just briefly talk about and be like, yeah, I got this.
Yeah. The Zen Ginger said, "Are you allowed to take a still from a video so you can record the tank and choose the best image, or does it have to be a one-shot photo?"
No, it could be a still. It's just whether you're going to get the quality you want, because you want it to be a top quality photo. You want to be able to see every little aspect. You don't want it blurry or anything. So there's probably people that have done that. I know a lot of people do the motion clicker. That's usually what they do the most is motion pictures, which take like 100 in a second. Fast frame rate.
I know that you can go onto their website, that IAPLC website, and you can see all the images that people have done, and they're gorgeous. Like these are like professional photos. They are really high level. The Nano Aquarium guy said most contests require raw files for those photos, so probably not. They don't want images to be edited, only cropped.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's some information.
Yeah.
The next one I want to talk about is the AGA one, and that's the Aquatic Gardeners Association. I cannot say enough good things about them. They have been absolutely incredible. And they have a bunch of categories too, right?
Oh yeah. Yep. It's pretty much just like a smaller version of it. They're pretty close in the rules and everything else.
Is that international or is that US?
So that one, I believe international people can enter into AGA. I actually don't know that one.
I feel like AGA is a US based organization. Am I correct about that?
Yes, it is in here. I don't know if anyone from Grant might know better.
The Zen Ginger also said burst shots are good too, in my experience, especially with cherry barbs or anything that turns fast. So you need a nice camera if you're doing this, something that can take fast photos and in low light. That's not cheap either. This is not a cheap hobby.
No, that is for sure. It is very expensive to do aquascaping. You got to think of just the tank alone can be expensive because the size you want is usually a larger tank. To get the depth that you want, it's harder to do it in a shallow, skinnier tank than it is a wider, shorter tank.
While you're looking that up, also there's I don't know that there's any other online competitions that I'm aware of that are large. I'm new to this, so that does not mean anything. The European Aquascaping Championship came up. That's an in-person event, apparently. Yep. And there's, of course, like Aquashella, the Aquatic Expo. I'm sure there's like the Chicago Plant Society. Is that what it's called? The club up in Chicago. They do some things.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I know Pisces has sponsored a couple of their like Wabikusa things. So there's like little tiny things all over the place. I think John Peeney was telling me about one that happens up in Wisconsin that he drives up to, and he's a really high ranked aquascaper in the IAPLC. And he said when he comes to do it, they're all like, because he knows all the components that judges are looking for when they score these things. He's sometimes a judge, in fact.
Yeah. I don't see anything about it not being in the U.S. So I'm pretty sure you can enter. I don't think they would have any issues with someone. You probably just might not get the awards.
So AGA is the other big one that I'm aware of. So we are at 30 minutes already, and we have not even hit a quarter of our of our outline. So I want to make sure we're keeping these short and sweet and not going on forever and ever. So we're going to have to break our promise. You're not going to know how to design like a pro by the end of this, but you do have some ideas of where you can go if you want to enter an aquascaping contest. Next week, we will do it on Thursday. That's going to be unless there's something weird going on, we're going to try and stick to Thursdays. As close to one as possible as we get used to as I get used to the technical aspects of getting the live stream started. I'm sure we'll get more on time. So we'll try and see you all next week on Thursday at 1 p.m., and we will get more into aquascaping fundamentals. Sadie said Chicago Aquatic Plant Society. That's who it is.
Thank you.
All right, bye, you guys.
Bye.